of the Metropolitan Council. Today is March 28th, 2018, and I call this meeting to order. The first order of business is the approval of the agenda. Can I have
Move, Madam Chair.
Second.
moved and seconded? Is there any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? The motion is adopted. The next order of business is the approval of the minutes from our March 21st meeting. Is there any discussion? Or can I have a motion?
Move approval.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? The motion is adopted. At this point in the meeting, members of the public who wish to address the council on matters not on the agenda may do so, but we would just ask you to limit your comments to 3 minutes. I don't see anyone signed up. Is there anyone who would like to address the council? I don't see anyone, so then we'll just move on to our first business item, which is a joint report from the Transportation, Environment Management, and Community Development Committees, and Councilmember Chavez is going to read the motion.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is item 2018-35, the Unified Budget Amendment. This amendment includes proposed changes to both the operating and capital components of the unified budget. On the operating side of the unified budget, divisions are proposing to carry forward $5.4 million in budget authority from the 2017 budget to the 2018 budget. There are sufficient year-end 2017 reserves available above target to fund these carryovers. And Metropolitan Transportation Services is proposing to transfer $20,000 of MVEST revenues to the capital program for bus midlife rehabilitation and replace it with $20,000 of federal capital funds. On the capital side of the unified budget, the Transportation Division is proposing to increase the authorized capital program by $14.3 million to provide spending authority for 5 capital projects that cannot wait until the first quarter amendment. This amendment has been reviewed and approved by the Transportation, Environment, Community Development, and Management Committees. Madam Chair, the motion is that the Metropolitan Council authorize the amendment of the 2018 unified budget as indicated in accordance with the staff materials.
Thank you, Member Chavez. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Is there any discussion? This is a roll call item, so Emily will call the roll.
Rodriguez,
Aye.
Schreiber,
Aye.
Munt, Barber,
Aye.
Elkins,
Aye.
Dorfman,
Aye.
Cunningham,
Aye.
Potowski,
Aye.
Reynoso, McCarthy,
Aye.
Rummel,
Aye.
Melander,
Aye.
Kramer,
Aye.
Commerce,
Aye.
Chavez,
Aye.
Wolf,
Aye.
Cheremoff,
Aye. The motion is adopted. The next order of business is the approval of the consent agenda. Can I have a motion and a second to approve that?
Move approval of the consent agenda.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? The motion is adopted. The next item on the agenda is reports of the standing committees. The first is the Community Development. Councilmember Commerce.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The committee has 4 items to recommend for the council's consideration. The first is item 2018-72. It's the authorization of the 2040 comprehensive plan for Eureka Township. A bit about the township. It's located in the south central portion of Dakota County, surrounded by the communities of Lakeville, Farmington, Castle Rock Township, Waterford Township, Greenvale Township, and New Market Township. The Thrive MSP 2040 forecasts growth of fewer than 200 new households in the community through 2040 and designates the township as an agricultural community. The township's plan appropriately guides land at densities and in patterns consistent with community designation land use policy. Our staff found that the township's 2040 plan conforms to regional system plans, is consistent with council policies, and is compatible with the plans of adjacent and affected jurisdictions. Therefore, Madam Chair, on behalf of the committee, I move that the Metropolitan Council adopt the attached advisory comments and review record and take the following 2 actions. First, authorize Eureka Township to place its 2040 comp plan into effect. And second, advise the township to implement the advisory comments in the review record for aviation, housing, water supply, and solar resources.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Is this our second community that's completed their comp plan?
Madam Chair, I believe so.
That's great. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? The motion is adopted. Member Commerce.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The second item is 2018-73. That is the City of Bloomington Friendship Village Comprehensive Plan Amendment. Madam Chair, this action is to amend the City of Bloomington's comprehensive plan. A couple of items about this particular business item. The amendment re-guides 1.76 acres from office to high-density residential as part of redevelopment and expansion of a senior housing campus, which is in an adjoining 23.3 acres. As part of the development, a wetland will be partially filled, and the remaining wetland basin will be enlarged to accommodate stormwater runoff. As a result, the developer is responsible for replacing the lost wetland at a 2-to-1 ratio. Our staff has concluded that alternatives to filling the wetland appear to exist, including alternative site plan configurations, relocating building mass, or limiting the scale of the expansion. Staff has found that the proposed amendment first conforms to regional system plans, secondly is consistent with council policies with the exception of the Natural Resources Protection Policy of Thrive MSP 2040 and the water sustainability goal of the Water Resources Policy Plan. And this amendment is inconsistent with those policies. Finally, the proposed amendment is compatible with the plans of adjacent and affected jurisdictions. So, Madam Chair, on behalf of the committee, I'd like to move that the council first adopt the attached review record and allow the City of Bloomington to place the Friendship Village Comprehensive Plan Amendment into effect. Second, find that the amendment does not change the city's forecast. Third, advise the city to implement the advisory comments in the review record for regional parks, land use, and surface water management. And finally, strongly encourage the city to support new development in ways that preserve and benefit from the natural environment and reduce development pressures that endanger remaining regional wetlands.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? The motion is adopted. Member Commerce.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The third item from the committee is 2018-74. It's Stillwater Township 2040 Comprehensive Plan. And this action is to authorize the comprehensive plan for the township. A couple of items, summary in nature. The first is that the township is located in Washington County, north of Stillwater and east of Grant. Thrive MSP 2040 forecast growth of fewer than 150 new households in the community through 2040. Thrive designates the township as diversified rural, and the township's plan appropriately guides land at densities and in patterns consistent with Thrive land use policies for the diversified rural community designation. Council staff found that the township's 2040 plan conforms to regional system plans, is consistent with council policies, and compatible with the plans of adjacent and affected jurisdictions. So, Madam Chair, I'd like to move that the council take the following actions: that we authorize Stillwater Township to place its 2040 comprehensive plan into effect, revise the township forecast downward as shown in Table 1 of the review record to reflect the reduced land capacity after annexation by the City of Stillwater, and finally advise the township to implement the advisory comments in the review record for transportation, surface water management, and housing.
Thank you, Member Commerce. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded. Any discussion? So then this is our third community, only 185 to go. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? The motion is adopted. Member Commerce.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The last item from the committee is item 2018-75. It's the approval of the 2018 Annual Livable Communities Fund Distribution Plan. The fund distribution plan includes the funding amounts, schedules, and scoring criteria for the 3 accounts in the Livable Communities Act fund for the year 2018. The fund distribution plan for 2018 makes available $9.5 million in the regular Livable Communities Demonstration Account, or LCDA, $7 million in the Livable Communities Demonstration Account TOD category, $7 million in the regular Tax-Based Revitalization Account category, $1 million in the Tax-Based Revitalization Account Seeding Equitable Economic Development, or SEED category, And finally, $2.5 million in the local housing incentives account. That's a total of $27 million. A couple of items just for the council's consideration. The 2018 fund distribution plan also makes the following changes from previous years. It offers pre-development grants through the regular Livable Communities Demonstration Account. This category of funding was previously only available through the TOD category. The 2018 plan shortens the review timeline for the regular Livable Communities Demonstration Account and its TOD review. This is to help streamline the process for all parties involved. The plan updates the list and map of station areas eligible for Livable Communities Demonstration Account TOD grants and pre-development grants in that category. This adds 2 high-frequency express bus stations as eligible for development grants and also adds the Gold Line light rail station, the Gold Line stations as eligible for pre-development grants. The plan lifts the per-unit award limit for some local housing incentives account home ownership grants with conditions. The plan implements the council's policy to require Livable Communities Act grant recipients to have a fair housing policy, enforcing it at the time that grant funds are requested. And finally, one provision that the committee spent a fair amount of time on discussing is to consolidate the tax base revitalization account TOD grant category into the regular tax base revitalization account grant rounds, maintaining the same amount of $7 million. So it's not an elimination of a funding source, it's a consolidation of the 2 categories. Just 2 other items, Madam Chair, based on feedback that I've gotten from communities. First, want to mention that use of the TBRA to support TOD is aligned with Thrive, and it's retained in the 2018 fund distribution plan as the committee has recommended. And then finally, we've heard from a number of communities, 3 to be exact, that adding transit access points to the regular TBRA scoring would be helpful, and that is incorporated, that is in the fund distribution plan that's proposed here by the committee. That transit accessibility and efficient land use is scored in the TBRA regular program. So, Madam Chair, with that, I'd like to move that the council approve the 2018 Annual Livable Communities Act fund distribution plan.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Seconded. Is there any discussion on this item? Member Dorfman?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to comment because one of my cities is one of the 3 that has sent letters to us questioning the value and the reasons for consolidating the TBRA TOD into the regular TBRA. So I was looking at sort of the history, and you all know more than I do about this. But so we started the separate the TBRA TOD in 2011. And so for 2011, 2012, and 2014, according to information I got from our staff, there was over $2 million allocated for TBRA TOD projects. And then after 2014, and that was when it was a standalone TBRA TOD fund. And then after that is when we linked it that you had to also apply for LCDA TOD. And that's when the applicants fell off. And one of the issues we're looking at in staff and the work group was looking at is why is it so undersubscribed? And so it appears to be because of that linkage. And so I know one of the things that the 3 cities that contacted us, or at least the letter I have from the Community Planning and Economic Development Director in Minneapolis is, why don't you just go back to separating it out again and give it a try and see if that's one of the issues, in addition to perhaps creating adding additional TOD scores if in fact we're going to consolidate. And so I'm just passing that along. It does appear that the issue of linking created some complexities, and that other communities felt either they weren't competitive or didn't have the capacity to then, proposed projects. I don't know, but there does seem to be this trend that it was working pretty well, and then it wasn't. So.
Madam Chair, I'm happy to try to address that question. I also, received the letter from the city of Minneapolis, and I appreciate its content. My response to that part of the message is there were two responses that I have to share. One is that this approach to the fund distribution plan, to the TBRA program, also does that. It accomplishes that goal of delinking the two, in the sense that we collapse the two categories of the TBRA program, and as a consequence, delink the issue as is described as a problem by Minneapolis staff. The second piece is that I think in 2011 we established this vehicle in the spirit of trying something that had not been in place before, and I contemplated that as, if not an experiment, a test to see to what extent having a separate category and the separateness of that category adds value. And in my view, it is. I think the value of its separateness is not just unclear. I think it's not proven itself. It creates administration internally that is challenging, and as we have seen, whether it's because of delinking or market factors or other things, the level of interest in that program, the subscription of those dollars, has been really variable, and so it creates an additional element, an additional variable that seems unnecessary to me. Finally, the fact that the regular TBRA program does have some points, actually significant points, scored for transit proximity and efficient land use, feels to me like a good way to address the spirit of the items that are called out in the letter from the city of Minneapolis.
Councilmember Schreiber?
Yes. Thank you, Madam Chair. Members, I was not aware that I had one community who felt strongly about this until I walked in here today. I was alerted that I had an email waiting for me, and it came from the city of Brooklyn Park. And they feel strongly, and I'm not able to speak as eloquently as Councilmember Dorfman because I don't have all the facts in my head here. But I just want you to be aware that I do have one of my largest city is opposed to this action. I'm curious about, in the committee report, they talked about the votes that were taken. And the first vote to approve the plan with the exception of the elimination of the TBRA TOD category passed unanimously. But then the second motion, I suppose there was further discussion in the committee, or could you explain how that all flowed and how it got done?
Member Commerce.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and Councilmember Schreiber. Yes, we had a good, I think, open discussion about all of the proposed changes for the 2018 fund distribution plan. And as you mentioned, it was clear that there was a lot of interest in discussion and some disagreement about this last item relating to whether to maintain two categories for the TBRA program or to consolidate those. And so in terms of the process, what I chose to do was entertain a motion on all of the other proposed changes to the fund distribution plan, which were not
Controversial.
not controversial really in any significant way, and then entertain a second motion on the consolidation of the two TBRA categories. And given the fact that that second motion was also adopted positively, I made the decision to bring the two items back together for the purposes of the business item for the full council's consideration.
Member Schreiber, did
Yeah,
you?
one more thing, Madam Chair. This doesn't mean less money into the systems. No. It's just a consolidation of, it's just organizing. What can I say to my city that could make them feel better about this action?
Madam Chair, I think my response to that Councilmember Schreiber, is really that I don't see this consolidation as a change in our policy as a body. I don't see it as a dilution in any way of our commitment either to partnership with our local partners around site investigation and site remediation, or I don't see it as a dilution of our commitment to accomplishing those goals in ways that maximize connection to transit and really make the most out of the valuable locations that are around the transit network. So as a policy, I don't really see this as a change in any way. I see this really mainly as a way to maintain a structure internally and be stewards of the way that we administer these programs internally. That's my own view. I don't want to suggest that that's universally shared, but that's the way I think about it.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Member Wolf.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I wanted to sort of chime in on Councilmember Commer's remarks. I remember when we came up with this trying of the separate program, and one of the concerns was, were people actually going to apply, and was it going to make things more complicated? And pretty much every year when we would have no applications, I'd say, maybe we should think about simplifying this and putting it back into one program. And I'm glad that we're headed in that direction. It does not put cities that are on transit lines at a disadvantage. Actually, it makes things simpler because you don't have to pick and choose between the two funds and figure out which one might I be more competitive in, which one's going to be oversubscribed, because it's all one fund. And projects that are along transit lines are always going to score higher because the way that the TBRA funding is allocated depends on how much you're going to increase the tax base and how many jobs you're going to bring to the region. The money comes from fiscal disparities, and it's specifically designed to enhance our tax base. Things that are along transit lines, particularly along LRT lines, tend to have very intense uses and huge increases to the tax base. So as a result, anything that was under the TOD program will score very well in the new program, but you eliminate that calculation before you apply of which one should I be applying for.
That's helpful. Thank you.
Member Cunningham.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. And I was one of the people that voted against this, and I had an expectation that we were bringing these items separately, so I was surprised that they were combined back together again, because that was our understanding at the committee meeting, but be it as it may. So I spoke against this at the meeting in part because it's a signal. It's a signal to the marketplace around this issue of TOD. And I also tried to reach some type of compromise around this issue, and said that I'm open to other formulas, and what I got was we already answered all the questions, and so the compromise wasn't forthcoming. For me, I might be more willing to vote for this item. Perhaps if we call the new fund the TBRA TOD fund, I don't know what the problem with that would be, because I think that's a simple solution to the problem in some of the issues that the cities have raised. I subsequently had a conversation with Libby Starlin. She's given me some additional information. And I think, I'm certainly still open for some type of compromise to the situation. But I do think the city of Minneapolis, the city of Brooklyn Center, and the city of Hopkins raised some valid points about what we're doing here. And I think, if we are really listening to them, I think we put this matter aside today, come back with a solution that can meet all of their needs within the context of this, and I think that's possible. But I think what we're doing today, if I'll probably be in the minority on this vote, but I think we continue to act as if the positions of these cities that are very important in our region that we're not willing to have that conversation and try to reach a compromise around these issues. We're just going to force it through. So be it as it may, let's do what we have to do. So I put forth a compromise just now. If somebody wants to back that up, I'd be willing to put that on the table as a compromise position. Doesn't change anything, just changes the name.
Were you looking for a second to your motion to have a
Sure.
conversation? I'll second your motion to continue the conversation.
Thank you.
So the motion on the table is to change the name of the current TBRA program instead of taking the current TBRA TOD program and making it just the.
I don't believe that's the motion that I made. What my understanding was is that we were going to have a broader conversation,
Okay, okay,
not specific.
not specific, okay.
So you were.
I'm going to do it, but I want to clarify. The chair, described the motion that I believe, or at least she believed that you made, and I'll agree with that to a certain extent. But I think I'm making the motion so that we can continue to have a conversation
Certainly.
on your issue.
That was your motion, Member Cunningham?
My motion.
To
My
have a
motion.
second on the motion, just to be clear, sorry.
My motion was, I had two parts to it. One is that we actually table this matter today on that section of the LCDA, and we have a further conversation about it so that we can bring back a compromise. So that's the motion that I'm making.
And I'm seconded for conversation's sakes.
Okay. Any discussion? Member Commerce?
Madam Chair, I want to make a couple of responses to Councilmember Cunningham's points. First, I want to apologize if there's any sense that the way that the business items are brought to the full council is not what you were expecting. That's entirely on my shoulders, and I take responsibility for that. Given the fact that the two items had been adopted, I felt that it was reasonable to recombine them, given that they really are related to the same topic. So as far as sort of germaneness, they in my view belong together. But I understand that you weren't expecting that, so I want to apologize about that. A couple of points about the suggested change. The first is that the tax-based revitalization account is actually created under state law in Chapter 473, and so it's named in the law. I'm not sure to what extent we have the flexibility to rename that on our end without the state statute being amended. Maybe we do, and maybe we don't. I'm not sure about that, but I would worry a little bit that there was ambiguity or confusion created by that. The second comment I wanted to make is that specifically with the city of Minneapolis, I had some dialogue with city staff earlier today, and I want to just focus for a moment on one of the elements of the letter from the director of the Community Planning and Economic Development Department, who said that he says if we do eliminate TBRA, TOD that we suggest, the city of Minneapolis suggests that we add transit access points to the regular TBRA scoring and ranking system to continue to encourage transit-oriented development. And I just want to reiterate that, as you see in pages 28 and page 30 of the attachment in the business item, that is already scored in the regular TBRA program. So what is called for in part by the city of Minneapolis is already in the fund distribution plan proposal that's before you. So for that reason, I don't support a unilateral renaming of the program, and I would plan to vote against a motion like that at this point.
Well, Member Commerce, just to clarify, I think that the motion was to table the matter, and the second was to have further discussion on it. So I don't think the motion before us at the moment is to rename it, just to be clear. Member,
If I could, we very seldom have conversations like this, and it seems to me that there's a couple of council members that just need some clarity. So the question I have to the chair or staff member is how, what is it, is there some timing issue that we need to do this today, or can we, have an opportunity to come back and we meet every couple of weeks? I think we do.
Member Barber?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I will defer to staff who knows the details of the timing, but as the Community Development Committee was briefed, there were issues related to the timing and the need to have it done today in order to have the funds distribute, or for the cities and communities to apply for it and have them distributed, so.
Can we invite staff up to
Madam
clarify
Chair,
that?
point of order. I'm not sure a matter of tabling is up for debate. I think I'm not sure that's up for debate. I'll just check with the rules, the Robert rules. I think it actually has to be voted on.
That's true.
Oh,
But
Okay.
that wasn't, I don't believe that that's.
Table and discussion. When you do.
can you clarify the timing for us, please?
Madam Chair, council members, we are interested in having the fund distribution plan approved or pieces of it approved in particular so that we can get out our traditional spring round of tax-based revitalization account funding and give cities enough time to put their applications together and move forward with getting the money out as we traditionally have. So I might suggest that if there is a way of approving part of the fund distribution plan to allow us to get some of the money out in a spring round, that might be a request from staff, and then continue to have other pieces of this discussion.
Go ahead.
Chair,
Member
just
Miller.
clarification. So we meet, when do we meet next?
April 11th.
April 11th.
April 11th.
2 weeks.
So, I mean, is 2 weeks going to be, implode this thing?
Yeah.
I'm just asking the question. I mean, typically we don't have members raise issues, and Lona just had so that's the question I'm asking.
A city come in just now. Yeah, go ahead, Libby.
Madam Chair, council members, certainly it's not going to implode. What we're trying to do is maximize the time cities have to work through applications. So we do have all of this calendared out so that we're getting money out in the timelines that cities are accustomed to seeing these applications and embedding that into their overall development, financing, planning commitments. So what we're trying to do is ensure that cities have as much time as possible to put good applications together and keep this moving forward.
But Chair, if I could, so 2 weeks is not going to create it might make people work a bit harder and quicker and faster, but it isn't going to delay this overall process here. And then the other question I have is that ample time, for those people that have concerns to get those questions addressed.
Member Dorfman?
So part of the problem we have as I begin to understand this more, and I appreciate all of your comments, is we keep saying that there's and Livia said this too, there's a messaging problem here because we keep saying we keep using that term eliminating TBRA TOD, and what you pointed out accurately is we're not actually eliminating TBRA TOD, we're consolidating. And so I think it has everybody a little bit concerned. If there is any way, given that it's statutory, the name TBRA regular is in statute, there might be some way, which the lawyers will have to look at, to have a subtitle of sorts that wouldn't run afoul of state statute, that would still send the message that this also includes TOD, and that's still a priority of Thrive and a priority of this council, because we've gotten off message. And if there's any way, as we sort of refine this, if we can get back on message, so we're making it clear that we're not backing away from a priority toward projects that are also aligned with transit corridors.
So just, I think going back to Member Cunningham's original motion to table the item, I'm hearing from council that if we were to table the item, it would need to be taken up at a later point in the meeting. Is that your advice?
Or if the intention is to table it for 2 weeks till the next council meeting, we should be addressing it in terms of postponing it until that time period. And then the discussion should be focused on solely whether or not to postpone it, not all the various merits of the things that you might consider if it were postponed.
That's great.
Okay. So then if we limit our comments then to whether or not we should postpone it to the next council meeting.
Madam Chair, that would be amenable to me. I think we can reach some agreement before the next council meeting.
Any other discussion? Member Schreiber.
My question is, when you had your meeting and you discussed this, were there, our cities anyway, the three of us are discussing them, were they represented, were they in attendance to the meeting?
Member Commerce.
Madam Chair, I know that some cities certainly have had representatives in the audience for the multiple discussions that we've had about the fund distribution plan. I believe we've had two pretty comprehensive sessions on this program and on the 2018 fund distribution plan. Those extend back a good number of weeks. This is not a recent thread of dialogue at all. The correspondence that I'm aware of is all from the last couple of days, and I respect that. That's certainly in order, but it's definitely in the later phase of the dialogue that we've been having here.
Member Barber.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And while the actual fund distribution plan wasn't part of the discussions with the Metro Cities LCA working group, there were a number of cities represented there. One of the three cities for sure was. I cannot remember if Hopkins was as well. But overwhelmingly, that group, which had a wide variety of cities, they wanted more simplification of the entire LCA process in general, and I think this is one way, especially because it doesn't reduce the amount available in TBRA. To me, that would be a bigger issue, and it still does weight points relative to transit, but there's it still allows that program to exist, but also simplifies it for a number of the other cities.
Member Cunningham.
Madam Chair, sure we're out of protocol at this point.
Yeah.
So I did ask the question when we were at the committee whether this actually came from the metro cities and the group, and I got told that it was really council-driven, is what I got told. This recommendation was a council-driven recommendation and not coming from the cities themselves. So I asked that question at committee, and that's the answer I got from staff. If I remember correctly, staff is here. I see Mr. Burns is shaking his head up and down. So this didn't come from the cities. It actually came from council members. And so that's my concern is we've got our city saying, or at least my city, and at least one of my cities is saying this is a problem for us. And we have other council members, their cities are saying it's a problem for them. I think we can reach some accommodation, my hope would be, with our cities. Otherwise, you're just forcing me, at least, I'll just speak for myself, to vote against this item when it's unnecessary.
So I think that given that the motion that's before us now is whether or not to table this discussion to postpone it to the next council meeting, I'm going to support that given the number of questions that we have at this time, and would ask for, if there's no further discussion on this particular motion. Oh, go ahead, Member Elton.
Chair, are we just talking about postponing just this portion of it or the whole?
I'll go back to Councilmember Cunningham.
Madam Chair, my intent in the motion was just the TBRA portion of this combination. The rest of the package of the LCDA was voted on unanimously by the committee. That's why I thought these were coming as separate items.
Okay. So then on the motion to just postpone the vote on that component, the TBRA component to the next council meeting, is there any further discussion on that motion? So then all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
No.
Nay.
Can we get did you get the noes? Okay. 4 noes. 5. Then we go back then to the original motion to adopt the rest of the Livable Communities Act fund distribution. Is that correct? That's not an actual motion because you moved it as a whole component.
Chair, can I,
Yep.
so I'm going to go to through the chair to John, and, certainly not to, would it be best to just delay everything, or by moving this thing forward, part of it? I mean, is that really of any benefit?
It's fine, but Sorry, go ahead, Member Converse.
Madam Chair, thank you, and I might just defer to our staff on the mechanics of that. I think my sense is that if we are able to establish, market expectation that we're working on a funding round that will be forthcoming under the 2018 fund distribution plan, then it becomes more of just a mechanical issue of the assembly, et cetera, internally. I'm not sure exactly whose time frame is going to get more compressed, if that's our staff or if that's local governments who are going to be preparing submittals. But somebody's going to have a little compression because there is some time sensitivity. But as you said, that maybe just can't be remedied, avoided.
Madam Chair?
Yep, Member Latowski.
Thank you. Maybe with council's help, we can move through this. I think we all know what we want to do. We just need to get the right motions on the floor. So I will make a motion to separate the motion as presented by the committee chair to separate out the LCDA and TOD components of the funding distribution plan and move those as one, and then separate out the TBRA. So council, is that enough
Will that do
of
it?
a motion?
I think if you move to amend his prior motion to separate out those pieces, that you could do that.
There it is. That's my motion.
So that's the motion. Is there a
Madam
second?
Chair, just a point of clarification, the item of the TBRA, a TOD question has already been tabled.
Yeah, that's right.
For rediscussion in 2 weeks. So I just wanted to make that clear. Okay.
So the motion is just separating out that component, the rest of the other items that haven't been tabled. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Member Wolf.
Madam Chair, the Livable Communities program includes LHIA as well. Do we need to have that included in what we approve?
Yes, please. Sorry, I wrote it over on the side, my notes.
Okay. Any other discussion?
We're taking, if I could,
Yep.
so we're taking some action here, and I can just get the sense that we're not really clear on the
The
actions
actual
that we're
action.
taking. Maybe we are, but just looking at people, my suggestion is that why don't we just park the thing for a couple of weeks, come back, and then, act on it? Because if we take some action, I guess we can rescind it. And my other comment is, we have to start using Robert's Rules of Order, we're in trouble. I mean, we are. We really are. So there isn't consensus, and we usually have, well, that's the truth. I mean, we usually have consensus, but now all of a sudden we're making motions and tabling, and, there's just a little, a little confusion here and misunderstanding, and just need to make sure that what the action that we're taking, we're all well aware of it.
Member Dorfman.
And perhaps we can ask the staff. My sense is that of this fund distribution plan, that the great majority of it, other than the section that we've already tabled, we all support, and we want to see it move forward. And we certainly don't want to send a message to our cities that we're hesitant about moving these various LCDA elements forward. So I would hope that we, instead of forwarding the whole thing 2 weeks, that we do what we take we've already taken action about that one, the TBRA and TOD section, and that we move the rest today and let staff get working on making sure that they can meet those spring deadlines that our cities expect.
So then, Chair, I'm going to really complicate things and go to the parliamentarian and make a motion to end discussion.
I think that we should, we should have a clarification of what Member Latowski's motion was one more time so that we're all 100% clear on it. Could you restate your
Absolutely,
motion?
and I think Councilmember Dorfman spoke in favor of it. As I understand, we cannot move forward with portions of the LCA funding distribution plan as it is because the TBRA is in there. So the intention of this motion is to separate out the TBRA component, which has already been tabled, so that we can move ahead with the LCDA, TOD, and LHIA components of the fund distribution plan.
Is that
So
clear?
the first motion is to separate them, and then I'd like to make a second motion to adopt the separated out ones. Does that make sense?
Does that work?
Is it,
I think you can just make a motion to approve the ones you want to approve.
I think you could probably just move to approve all but the portion that has been postponed for 2 weeks.
Okay, if that's an easier way to do it, council, we'll do it that way.
And Madam Chair, I re-second that motion.
Great. Any additional discussion on that motion? Member Wolf?
Thank you, Madam Chair. There's probably no point in splitting it up to hurry the other ones through, because the only one that's distributed twice a year is TBRA, which is the one that we're fighting over. So that's the one that's really facing the time crunch. The other ones are only awarded once a year, so you're not saving any time.
You know, staff is recommending, staff is interested in
ahead.
having the other ones be approved, so.
Help us.
Madam Chair, council members, nothing's ever simple with this program. We also have 2 cycles of pre-development grants that happen in the spring and fall also. So, you know, there's a time crunch there. And for the TBR, or for the LCDA, both categories, the regular and the TOD, we have workshops and a pre-application process that also starts in May. So those need to get moving too.
Any other discussion on this item? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? The motion is adopted. The next item on the agenda is the report from the Environment Committee. Councilmember Rummel, would you like to read that?
Thank you, Madam Chair and members. Business item 2018-70 is a request for a public hearing for the Minneapolis Interceptor Rehabilitation Project proposed facility plan amendment. We're going to have Janine Clancy, Assistant Manager of Technical Service, and Scott Dents, Interceptor Engineer, provide some background for us as we look at this.
Great, welcome.
Thank you. Madam Chair and members of the council, this is a request for a public hearing on the proposed facility plan amendment in the Minneapolis Interceptor Rehabilitation Program. So the facility plan for the Minneapolis Area Interceptor Rehabilitation Program was approved in February of 2013. So it's almost 5 years old, and we have been working since that time to implement a number of projects included in that facility plan. Those projects include rehabilitation of our interceptor system in the north part of Minneapolis as well as southwest Minneapolis. And I know many of you are familiar with some of the projects that we've done in that area. So as staff engaged in the design of the improvements related to Regulator 4, 2 components of the facility plan, which are Regulator 4 and 1 MN 344, which is an interceptor located pretty much along the Minnehaha Creek corridor. It was determined during the preliminary design phase that the project contemplated in the facility plan could not be accomplished without temporary impact of groundwater flow to Coldwater Spring. So as a result of that, because the spring has great cultural significance to the Native American community, the staff took a pause and decided to take another look at how we were going to design that project. So again, reduction of flow to the spring could violate state law that prohibits any impact, and when I say any, I mean temporary or permanent impact to the spring, to the flow of the spring. And again, so at this time, Scott and I would like to walk you through the components of the facility plan amendment, talk to you a little bit about our public outreach, and then put us back into center about where this project falls in line with other projects that we are undertaking. So with that, just as a quick overview of where we're located, again in southeast Minneapolis, the north part of the project limits are Minnehaha Parkway. The south part of the project area is bounded by the crosstown or State Highway 62. And then again, the eastern edge is along Trunk Highway 55. So with that, I'll go ahead and turn that over to Scott.
Madam Chair, like Janine said, the construction proposed in the original plan required dewatering. And this dewatering would impact or likely impact the spring. So we took a step backward and stopped design and reevaluated the alternatives to solve the problem, which is to rehabilitate or remedy the deteriorated facilities. We did an extensive amount of hydrogeologic groundwater modeling and investigative work. We drilled holes, we did pressure testing, and concluded that however slight it was, there could be a temporary impact to the spring. Now, this slide summarizes the proposed changes to the recommendations. The original facility plan anticipated a new regulator structure as well as a new interceptor tunnel beneath the creek in Highway 55, terminating at the circle. At a total cost of estimated at about $28 million. Now, the amended facility plan anticipates accomplishing essentially the same thing using rehabilitation methods. We rehabilitate and refurbish regulator R4, rehabilitate the existing interceptor tunnel. It also addresses a rehabilitation need for 2 drop shafts, and they're labeled here A1 and D1. All that for a total cost of about $31 million. Now, all this work, converting it to a rehabilitation project, carries some risk. We eliminated the impact to the spring, but now we're going to cause a little more nuisance to the neighborhoods because we're going to have to manage the wastewater flow around the construction site. And this slide is very preliminary, it's conceptual, and indicates the width and breadth of this temporary conveyance system. It would extend from East 52nd Street all the way to Minnehaha Parkway in a north-south direction, and from the west side of Highway 55 into the park to the point where you see MH8. This is a slide or an image, a photograph of the underpass under Minnehaha Parkway. It's been altered to show what a temporary conveyance system might look like under there. That's a Jersey barrier similar to the ones you see in the highways, and 3 polyethylene 24-inch diameter pipes. This pipe would convey the wastewater.
Madam Chair, I just
Member Cunningham.
That's temporary, you said? Okay,
yeah, it's not permanent.
Yeah.
Madam Chair.
Okay.
What's the duration of temporary, though? Is that part of your question?
Madam Chair, the duration to accomplish the work may be as long as 2 years, 2.5 years. It's extensive, and we are going to take where it's going to be monitored 24/7. It's going to be a robust system. We need 2 pipes to convey the flow, the maximum flow, and we're providing for a redundant pipe. And in the event we have a failure in one of the others, we can switch it over. The pumping system will be redundant as well. We will utilize utility power to keep it quiet or quieter. We will also have standby generators set on the site of the pumps in the event we lose power. It'll be monitored 24/7, but like any conveyance system, there's an element of risk. It's on the surface, it could be hit by a snowplow or in a car accident. So this slide is at 52nd Street. Again, this is very preliminary and conceptual. The 4 blue boxes are pumps, and they would draw flow out of the upstream interceptor and convey it around the work zone. So And this is where we draw flow from. Next slide is another view of the same area, looking south at the pumps. Light rail on the left. This is a service road, I believe. And again, you can see the 3 24-inch diameter polyethylene pipe. Again, this is very conceptual. The actual alignment and appearance may be different. So, in summary, this temporary conveyance system is a big deal. It's going to be complicated, long-lived. And
Member
Madam Chair, with
Elkins?
that,
Sorry, couldn't we just pause for 1 second? Member Elkins, did you have a
Thank you,
question?
Mr. No, this isn't that unusual. It seems to me I've seen this done before. Yeah.
Madam Chair, members of the council, I think, again, for those of you have seen this in southwest Minneapolis and along Hopkins, we just completed a very significant project in the Phelan area. Council Elkins member is in Richfield. We did that work in Richfield in anticipation of a large county road city project. We have been in the process of doing this work for the past 6 or 7 years. And one of the reasons that we're sharing this information with you is that at this point, the project has really gone from concern about impact to Coldwater Spring to now, because it's such an area full of pedestrian and bikes and traffic, that we're shifting our focus, and we want to make sure that you're aware that we recognize the impacts to all modes of transportation, and that we're engaging the public in that conversation.
Member Dorfman.
I'm sure. Thank you. So the difference between new construction and the rehab you're doing, what's the different sort of life of the project then? Does it make a difference? I mean, are we going to be doing this again in 10 years?
Madam Chair, the duration or the durability of the repairs, I believe, will be fairly equivalent.
Okay.
We would select the best materials for the rehab that are available. It'll be difficult work. We're going to have to enter the facilities through existing structures, and it'll require a lot of handwork and assembly of the pipe materials. But we will select the best materials available to do the work.
Did that answer your question, Member Cunningham?
Yeah, and I could yield to you if you'd like.
Oh, no, you can ask your questions and I'll ask mine.
Okay. So my question is on this project. There was a whole demonstration around the 55 project, and I was involved with that a little bit. And, there was a lot of angst because of this sacred land and the trees there at the time, and this Coldwater Springs came up at that time. And I'm just wondering, have we had any conversations with the Native community about this? We don't want to, be in the Walker Arts Center or something like that. So I'm a little concerned that we make sure we've had these conversations, and we feel that these conversations had led to some agreement about how this sacred spring will be addressed.
Madam Chair, members of the council, we have been, last year, in fact, there was a letter that was sent from Chair Dunnick to the members of the Native American community. And at that time, we took a pause and we informed them that we were holding off on advancing the project any further. We have been re-engaging them at this point, and actually we're set up in your packet. It shows that we were set up to present the project last Saturday or Sunday. Unfortunately, the community informed us that their agenda was really full, and they asked us to delay that. But we are reaching out to the Native American community again. And that's frankly part of the facility plan process, is to take all of those comments, and then you'll have the benefit of hearing those comments at the public hearing when we present the outcome of the public hearing to you.
Just to follow up,
Sure.
Madam Chair, I just think it's really important that we may want to consider having a conversation, not just with staff, but with the chair and the council member representing that area, because I just think, there's been so much history of misinterpretation and misunderstanding. So I just would think we might want to take just an additional step so that we're, not getting in a misstep, which has happened. Just a suggestion.
Thank you. No, that, again, that's part of our communication plan. We certainly will do that. Thank you.
Member Lotowski.
Thank you so much. And thanks to staff for all the work you've done on this. This was actually the topic of the very first meeting I went to before I was even sworn in for the council. So it started like my first emails that I got, if we saved them that far back, would all be about this. And people in the community were writing letters to the local newspapers to draw attention to the likelihood that the original plan was going to impact Coldwater Springs. So I really appreciate that staff has paused and found a solution that is going to take away the wastewater of all the people in that area and investing in a system that's going to last for the next 100 years in a way that is not going to impact Coldwater Springs. So I really appreciate that. And this was on the agenda for the last Environment Committee, obviously, because it's coming up under that category. And I wasn't able to make it to that meeting. And so I also really appreciate that you've come to the full council to show the change and the impact that it's going to have on the community. So my question is, has this been reviewed with the city and especially the council member's office? Because I suspect that council member will let me know if they're not happy with it.
Madam
I'd
Chair,
like to get in front of that, if you don't mind.
Madam Chair, members of the council, we met with Public Works staff last week and identified some preliminary issues, and then we are in the process of reaching out to council members again as part of our engagement process. That said, I will tell you that we did work out a number of issues under the original plan with Councilmember Johnson, but we do need to come back and update him on the changes to the plan and how that could look different. So we need to bring him up to speed as well.
Okay. And just one other thing that's coming to my mind. I know there's a couple of development sites down there, and are you just making sure that you're coordinating with the other development that's happening in the area?
Yes, we are.
Okay, thanks.
Great.
Okay, so before you on the screen is we've broken the project communications plan outreach just in 3 phases, and we're really in the regulatory process at this time and starting in on 1B, which is starting to work on the final design. So again, before we get into the details of the project, we will complete our regulatory process, which includes a public hearing and a number of public outreach meetings. Once we get into design and construction, we oftentimes have, as you can see on our project communications under construction, it's more of that in the neighborhood type of construction that people I think have become very familiar with. So I'll just skim over this a little bit and then go to our timeline. Just to put things into context, we're presenting to our stakeholders in March and April of this year. We have a public information meeting scheduled in the neighborhood. Let's see, located at, just a minute, it's at St. Peter's Church in South Minneapolis. That's on Tuesday, April 24th. Formal comment period is from April 25th to June 1st. And then we have a public hearing in the middle of that time frame, Tuesday, May 22nd. And again, our public hearing is on the next slide. The location of that public hearing is in the neighborhood. From there, we take the comments, we review those with the council members, and then we ask for an adoption of the facility plan, which we anticipate in June. And again, then we move into final design, which would take into consideration all of the comments that you folks have made, as well as the comments from the stakeholders. And we know, again, in this project, that includes many interested members of the bike community, the pedestrian community, parks, quite a few people. So as Scott mentioned, we have a project timeframe that we're anticipating beginning construction in April of 2019 and ending in November 2021. I'm sure people will be glad to see those temporary pipes gone once that project is over. Sorry.
Madam Chair.
Member Dorfman.
So this was similar to what was done in Sidna, right?
Yes.
So it might be helpful and it lasted a really long time. It might be helpful to show when you're go into the neighborhood and to show pictures from that and then what it looks like now, because then they, will see, it's happened in other parts of town and it wasn't the end of the world and it's done and it looks great.
Thank you for that suggestion. We'll do that. So again, because this is a facility plan amendment, there's a formal process, and we ask that written or fax or email comments be directed to Tim O'Donnell. Tim O'Donnell is a member of our staff in environmental services, is a public liaison officer. That information is there and is also located on our website. This project, in terms of Thrive, commits financial resources invested in efficiently and effectively managing our infrastructure, maintains and restores the system capacity, and protects and enhances the region's natural resources. So this is our proposed action, is that we request that the Metropolitan Council authorize the public hearing for the proposed amendment to the facility plan for Minneapolis Interceptor Rehabilitation Project Phase 2, project number 8076. And I just wanted to point out that if any of you are interested, the facility plan amendment, as well as quite a bit of information about the project, is located on the council's website under sewer updates, and you can find that information located on that slide.
Great. Member Rummel.
Thank you. Therefore, I move that the Metropolitan Council authorize a public hearing for the proposed amendment to the facility plan for the Minneapolis Interceptor Rehabilitation Project, Phase 2, project number 8076.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any additional discussion or questions on this item? Seeing none, thank you so much for the presentation. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? The motion is adopted. The next item on the agenda is the Management Committee. Councilmember Chavez.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is business item 2018-66, a labor agreement with the Metropolitan Council Management Association. MANA represents 110 supervisors and managers who work for regional administration, environmental services, metropolitan transportation services, and community development. Following recommendation from the MANA Executive Board, MANA membership ratified the agreement on March 9, 2018. Highlights of the agreement include a 3-year contract effective January 1, 2018. For each year of the agreement, a 2% general increase for all eligible employees in the bargaining unit. For each year of the agreement, a performance pool of 1.5% to be distributed based on performance to employees whose compensation falls within the performance zone. An increase in employee responsibility for health insurance premiums by 0.5% each year until the amounts reach 20% for family coverage and 10% for single coverage. The cost of the labor agreement was reviewed by Finance and was negotiated within the economic parameters established by the Council. The item was reviewed and approved by the Management Committee on March 14. Madam Chair, the Management Committee moves that the Metropolitan Council authorize the Regional Administrator to enter into a labor agreement with the Metropolitan Council Management Association effective January 1, 2018 through December 31, 2020.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? The motion is adopted. The next item on the agenda is then reports from council members. We met just last week, so does anyone have a report they would like to share?
Madam Chair,
Member Cunningham.
I attended the open house discussion of the Sea Line. Was well attended. I mean, there were probably over 100 people there at the UROC building in North Minneapolis. People are excited about the project, but they're also wondering how it's going to affect them. And so I think staff did a fantastic job of explaining what the project was, what the impact would be, and how those impacts would be mitigated for that line. But there is a lot of enthusiasm about it. So that happened last week.
Great. Anything else? I just have a quick update on the federal level as it relates to transit in particular. I think probably many of you know that both the House and the Senate approved a $1.3 trillion FY18 omnibus appropriations bill, and the president signed that bill into law on Friday. The bill provides funding for the Federal Transit Administration, which obviously is a major source of funding for our transit system, but in particular, it includes additional revenue for the New Starts program, which funds our major projects like Southwest LRT, Botno, and the Orange Line that we have specific requests in for. It is a high watermark. It is the highest annual appropriation that this program has received ever. And it's above obviously the appropriation from last year. So I think it shows it's really a strong signal from Congress that these projects, the capital improvement program within the Federal Transit Administration is still a very important program, and that there are projects around the country that are shovel ready and ready to kind of deploy that capital. So that's an exciting update there. One other final update is that as our communities are working on their comprehensive plans, many of you have probably seen that our Community Development Division won an award from the American Planning Association, nationally recognized for their local planning assistance work. So congratulations and thank you to them. And if there are no additional updates, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.